Vizekusen, the German nickname for Bayer Leverkusen, a derogatory term referring to how often the team got within touching distance of silverware, only to fall short at the last minute, with Weiss meaning second in German. The English nickname is Neverkusen, referring to you get the point. Bayer Leverkusen are often considered an extremely unlucky team, constantly ranked among the best teams in Germany, but almost never as serious contenders for the Bundesliga. Until today, that is. Against all expectations, the serial runners-up dispensed all their past demons to become champions of Germany. This was no fluke either, as Leverkusen won it while breaking an impressive number of records. But how did this happen? Let's start from, well, the start. Also, I apologize in advance for my pronunciation. Bayer Leverkusen was founded in July 1904 by workers of the Bayer AG pharmaceutical company. They spent long spells of time in the lower tiers of German football before reaching the second tier in 1963 and finally being promoted to the Bundesliga in 1979. Due to their connection to the pharmaceutical company, they were nicknamed Die Werkself, meaning the Workers 11. The team would win their first major piece of silverware in the 1988 UEFA Cup, now known as the Europa League. It was no easy feat either. Die Werkself were constantly winning ties by 1-goal margins, and in the final they went 3-0 down to Espanyol in the first leg, before making a stunning comeback in the second leg and eventually winning on penalties. After the win, Rainer Kallmund would become the general manager of the club and lead Leverkusen through one of its most successful periods. Following the reunification of East and West Germany, Leverkusen under their new manager would make several successful signings from the former Democratic Republic. These signings included forwards Ulf Kirsten and Andreas Thom, as well as defender Jens Melzig, all of whom became fan favorites. Kirsten in particular would go on to make 350 appearances for Leverkusen, scoring 181 goals and ending his career there. With these new players, Leverkusen would go on to win the DFB Pokal in 1993. Though, do we really want to count this? The next season, Bayer Leverkusen would play Frankfurt as one of their first fixtures. To pay homage to their own history and maybe banter the opposition a little, Bayer Leverkusen would play the match in their third colors, which were red and black stripes, much to the ire of Frankfurt fans whose players wore similarly colored jerseys. Basically, imagine if today, Barcelona designed their third kit to be all white, just to annoy Real Madrid fans. Oh wait. The new colors proved to be so popular with the Leverkusen faithful that the team switched their home jerseys to feature black and red. But perhaps as karma for the whole jersey stunt, they were almost relegated in 1996. Leverkusen would then hire a new manager, Christoph Daum. The man was an enigma, known for strange training routines and once even making his players walk barefoot over broken glass. Whatever his methods, they seemed to work as he brought Leverkusen to 3 runners-up finishes in the league. So great was his success that he was about to become the Germany national team manager. Sounds promising, right? Well, all of that came crashing down when Daum was convicted of, consumption of a certain powder. I don't want to risk anything with the algorithm. Initially denying the charges, Daum eventually confessed his guilt after facing the threat of prison. This would not only cause a sacking, but also cost him the national team job. Meanwhile, Leverkusen fans were rather upset with how often they came so close to winning the league, only to fall just short. Between 1997 and 2002, out of 5 seasons, they finished in second 4 times. Supporters found 2000 and 2002 especially painful. In 2000, on the final day, Leverkusen only needed to at least draw with Unterhaching, but a 2-0 defeat, including an own goal by Michael Ballack, would see Leverkusen conceding the title to Bayern Munich by goal difference. It especially hurt as Bayern had to lift a replica on the day because the real Bundesliga Meisterschale had been taken to Unterhaching and needed to be taken to the Allianz Arena for Bayern's crowning. Meanwhile, in 2002, Die Werkself were in contention for a treble. They were in contention for the Bundesliga and reached the final of the Champions League and DFB Pokal. No points for guessing what happens next. In the DFB Pokal, they were beaten 4-2 by Schalke 04, lost the Champions League final 2-1 to Real Madrid, and in the Bundesliga with 3 matches left, Leverkusen were 5 points clear of Borussia Dortmund, but choked at the last minute and conceded the title to Dortmund. Wonder if they'll get a nickname soon. This collapse across all fronts was so catastrophic that supporters would dub it the Treble Horror. Oh, and to mash salt in the wound, Germany would lose the World Cup final to Brazil that same year, with 5 Leverkusen players in the team, 3 of whom played in the final. After that disastrous display of bottling, the club would go on a steep decline. They lost key players Michael Ballack and Roberto to Bayern Munich and had to fend off relegation for much of the ensuing season. Manager Topmöller would be sacked and Klaus Augenthaler would replace him with 2 games left, leading Leverkusen to escape relegation by the skin of their teeth. The next season, Leverkusen would reverse their fortunes again with a 3rd place finish and qualifying for the Champions League, where they would get revenge on Real Madrid and finishing top of the group despite being knocked out the next round. Augenthaler would be sacked the next season after Leverkusen experienced their worst league start in more than 20 years, after only winning once in their first 4 matches.
This is the worst start to the season ever!
The Werkself would decide on Michael Skip as their next manager, and he would lead the club to an eventual 6th place finish, then 5th the next season. And keeping in line with their new pattern, the 2007-08 season would see Leverkusen squandering a good start to the season, and just barely missing out on the UEFA Cup, for which Skip was sacked soon after. That's right, folks. 2 great seasons and a 3rd season hangover. We found the club equivalent of Jose Mourinho. I could go over every individual season since then, but all you really need to know is that this pattern would become a perpetual cycle of pain for the Leverkusen faithful. That brings us to October 2022, where the club were stuck in 17th place and facing relegation yet again, and something needed to change. They needed a new manager. Widely celebrated as one of the greatest midfielders of his generation, Xabi Alonso has quite the playing resume. Throughout his career, he played for giants like Liverpool, Real Madrid, and Bayern Munich, as well as being part of the Spanish golden generation that won the 2010 World Cup. His transition to management after retiring perhaps shouldn't come as a surprise, as the man has worked under some of history's best. He has played under Rafa Benitez, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, and Pep Guardiola. It should also be mentioned, he's childhood friends with Mikel Arteta, who is another up-and-coming manager. Alonso would start his career with Real Madrid's U14 side before moving on to Real Sociedad's B team. He would stay there for years despite being linked with teams like Borussia Mönchengladbach, but after Real Sociedad B's relegation to the 3rd tier in 2022, Alonso would leave the club. So, what next? With Leverkusen struggling, as I mentioned before, Alonso was brought in to turn things around. And he did just that. In his first match at the helm, Leverkusen would secure a 4-0 win over Schalke 04. Despite not doing too well in his first few months, Alonso would lead the Werkself to a 6th place finish and reach the Europa League semifinals, being narrowly eliminated by Mourinho's Roma. Leverkusen's position meant they qualified for next year's Europa League, and they were expected to do well after their turnaround, but no one could foresee what would come next. Alonso in 2023-24 would most commonly set up his men in a 3-4-2-1 formation, with a focus on build-up play. Rather unusual for a team who would be considered an underdog title contender, but Alonso thought differently and decided to stick to short passing, attacking through the wings, combined with a philosophy of total football. In goal, they had Lucas Hradecky, a grizzled veteran who brought much-needed experience and stability to a relatively young defensive backline. Speaking of the backline, the defense would usually consist of Odilon Kosanu, Jonathan Tah, and Edmond Tapsoba. See what I mean about the pronunciation? 23, 28, and 25 years old, respectively. Defenses usually consist of some of the most experienced players in the squad, but this young backline has led the best defense in the Bundesliga, only conceding 19 goals so far. On the wings, we find Alejandro Grimaldo and Jeremy Frimpong, both of whom left a massive impression on defenders this season, combining for a total of 17 goals and 20 assists. In the midfield, Leverkusen have Robert Andrich and Granit Xhaka. Andrich would act as the ball-winning midfielder, while Xhaka, recently signed from Arsenal, would focus on the midfield's playmaking duties. Moving on to the attacking midfielders, and we get 2 big names, Adam Hlozek and Florian Wirtz, 2 raw up-and-coming talents who tore defenses to shreds. Wirtz in particular could be what the German national team needs to revive their squad. Finally up top, we have Victor Boniface. The Nigerian was briefly contending for top scorer early on in the season before missing a long stretch of the season through injury, but there is no doubt that the kid shows promise. Oh wait, he's older than me. And while they didn't feature as much, names like Piero Hincapi, Ezequiel Palacios, and Patrick Schick would also contribute to the coming season. Okay, please don't laugh at my pronunciation. With their brand new squad, Leverkusen were prepared to cook. The team would grab 45 points in the first half of the season and leading the pack in the Bundesliga race. Amidst all of this, Alonso was linked to many other clubs, most prominently Liverpool, but he remained focused on his current project. Amazing consistency from Leverkusen combined with baffling inconsistency from league bullies Bayern Munich meant Leverkusen were 13 points clear of Bayern by matchday 27, including humiliating the Bavarians 3-0. That gap would widen further after Bayern continued to stumble, losing their Klassiker at home for the first time in 10 years and bottling a 2-0 lead against Heidenheim, while the Werkself just kept winning. Then the day came. April 14th, 2024, when Leverkusen secured a 5-0 win at home over Werder Bremen, with Florian Wirtz scoring a hat-trick. This dude is only a few weeks older than me. This win confirmed a 16-point lead over Bayern with 5 matches left, meaning it was mathematically impossible for Bayern to catch up. With 5 games left in the season, Bayer Leverkusen won the Bundesliga for the first time in their history. That wasn't the only history they made either, because Leverkusen won in impressive fashion. They broke Bayern Munich's stranglehold on the Bundesliga, costing them the league for the first time in 11 years. Across all competitions, they played 43 matches, scored 123 goals, and only conceded 31 times. Not to mention that at the time of writing, they are the only team in the top 5 European leagues to still be undefeated all season. That's right, 43 matches and not a single loss. Now, it would be easy to write this season off as a freak event, an anomaly, if you will. Many kept asking throughout the season, when will the magic run out, expecting Leverkusen to crumble eventually. But this very much reminds me of Leicester City's miracle run, which probably deserves a video for itself. Sure, it's easy to dismiss this season as just pure luck, but the fact is, they looked and in fact, were impossible to beat this season. So impossible, in fact, that when Bayern lost their Klassiker, head coach Thomas Tuchel went in front of the press and essentially said it's Jover. Many may see this season as an unusual upset that will never be repeated, and that's fine, because it symbolizes why we love football. Underdog stories like this are entirely why we call it the beautiful game. Think of the Leverkusen supporters who stuck with their team through thick and thin, their volatile 3-season cycles, the Treble Horror, the moniker of Vizekusen, and always being so close yet so far. How easy would it have been to switch to a serial winning team like Bayern Munich? Perhaps some did, but most chose to stay. And their persistence was finally rewarded as supporters invaded the pitch and were so loud, some didn't even realize the final whistle had been blown. It perfectly captures the emotions of being a fan of a team, always considered underdogs, finally capturing the ultimate prize. The season could hold yet more glory for Leverkusen as they're still in contention for a treble. They're still in the DFB Pokal and also the Europa League. Thankfully, no matter what happens from this point on, there will be no repeat of the Treble Horror after capturing the Bundesliga. There is already talk of Leverkusen going undefeated the entire season, and while I can see it happening, I also think the chances are pretty low. Precisely because Leverkusen are still in contention for 2 other trophies, I think they'll rotate the squad quite a bit domestically to give their key players some rest for the bigger matches, and give their young players a bit more playing time. But who knows? They've been invincible so far, so why not a few more matches? And with Xabi Alonso confirming his dedication to Leverkusen's project, maybe this could be what the Werkself need to enter a golden age.